Is that working? Yep. All right. We don't have one of those clappers that says, all right, take one. All right, so hi, I'm Dr. Susan Thompson, and I'm really glad to be here. At my right here on the floor, I know maybe a couple of you haven't noticed, I have my dog with me today. She's a therapy dog, and she has been certified. She's got her own little tag that says I'm a therapy dog. She's got a bandana. I don't have the bandana on today. But this is Emma, and more than likely she'll just lay here and be quiet. Unless I get really animated and then she's like, oh, what's going on? Which may very well happen. So today, what we're going to do is talk about really essentials, what I call the power tools of communication, and for helping and for counseling. Each of you should have a set of handouts. So there's a chunk of them right here for anyone who didn't get one, get a set. And there you go. So the first page on this is open-ended. Like, here's what, so the skills that we're going to be talking about are listening, observation, paraphrasing and summarizing, immediacy, and reflection of affect. So we're going to explore each one of these skills. And this is a really interactive kind of workshop. And so I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to ask you for input during this time. It's a small group, so if we can just kind of start with tell me your name and also what your major is, if you will, where you are in school. Because I think folks that come to do internship here come from different programs. So tell me your name and what your major is and what school you go to.
My name is Sierra Johnson. My major is social work, and I'm attending Norfolk State University.
Great.
This is my senior year.
Okay, thanks.
My name is Michelle Walters. I attend Old Dominion University and I'm
Human
Human Service.
Services, great.
Courtney Trent and social work major at MSU.
Okay.
My name is Kaya. I'm a social work major. I'm actually in the MSW program at Norfolk State.
So we've got some undergrad and also some masters. All right. And how about you?
Joshua Hunter. I'm a senior at Norfolk State.
Okay.
Social work.
So part of the reason I think it's helpful to talk about skills is that's like the great leveler. It's the very beginning. It matters. So my background, first of all, is I'm a counselor and a counselor educator. My doctorate is in counseling. So I have taught as a full-time professor at Old Dominion University in the graduate counseling program. And I've actually had a private practice in counseling since 2001. So I just came from my office and I'll be heading back to my office when we're done. And over the years, I really started zeroing in on what skills seem to get the most out of interactions with clients and also colleagues and other folks that might be communicating with. And I really distilled down all the different skills that are possible to use in interacting with people to these that are on this sheet: listening, observation, paraphrasing and summarizing, immediacy, and reflection of affect. So to level the playing field, especially when it comes to, we've got one person who's in human services, and we've got several folks who are undergrads in social work and one who's a grad in social work. So if we let's start with skills, then that's going to be a really helpful place for you to begin in your interactions with the folks that you are working with, the kids that you're working with. And no big surprise, if you can master this with kids, it becomes easier to communicate with adults. How about that? So then we start with listening. That's an essential skill, right? What does listening look like? What are some, if we break down listening into micro skills or different pieces, what are parts of listening?
Eye contact.
Eye contact, yeah.
Nonverbals, like nodding.
head shaking, nodding, turning towards somebody. Yeah. Those make a difference. We have a culture now that we're spending a lot of time doing this, and it matters that we're making eye contact. And you're probably aware that too much eye contact might make a difference too, right? Have you noticed that? There's kind of a dance too with eye contact. Have you noticed that? And when I say there's a dance, what I mean is it's usually the person who's doing the talking that makes more eye contact, and the person who might be listening might be listening differently, like not making as much eye contact. And even the person talking might be doing something like this, or there's a whole other study of how our eyes are put in different quadrants, and it gives you information there too. That's neuro-linguistic programming. Awesome. If you've ever heard of that or want to look into it.
I heard like when people like look to the left sometimes, like it means like they're not maybe being all the way honest or completely truthful or something.
I think you have to look at the patterns with people. So it might be looking to the left and down would be accessing emotions. So I'm not an expert in neuro-linguistic programming. So you might start to pay attention to where you look when you're accessing thoughts or memories versus feelings or ideas. I find myself in sessions with clients kind of looking up like this because I'm searching for words, and I'm also kind of putting information together. So that's and I'll explain that to some folks too. It's like, when I do this, it's because I'm really, it actually also what's happening is I've got like 3 or 4 different thoughts happening at the same time, and I need to kind of prioritize what's the most important related to what's going on in the session in the moment. So we've got listening skills that are not just using our ears, but also paying attention, which is really the next one is observation. That's a key skill when we're also communicating. What are we observing? You've already said one piece of it, nonverbals, right? So if we tease apart nonverbals, what are we looking for in terms of nonverbals?
The posture, like that affects it. A lot of people look at your posture.
Yeah,
I
that
know in
affects.
some areas, like wherever you're from, if you do a certain posture, they'll think it's offensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think if you, like, say you cross your knees type thing, you point your toe to, like, say like I don't know, like a Muslim man or something like that. It's like a sign of disrespect.
So there's even more subtle
Yeah.
signs that you might pay attention to depending on where that person's what that person's culture is. So being knowledgeable about someone's culture will make a difference. What else in terms of observation? What else are you noticing?
Their mood.
Yeah, how can you tell mood?
Different things, like way they talk, how they look.
So rate of speech, right? Facial expressions too, but we said nonverbals, now we're breaking it down into smaller pieces. How their words fit together with their, how they're physically presenting, right? So you're noticing, is there congruence or is there a disconnect between what somebody's saying and how they're saying it? That gets at mood and emotions as well, right? Anything else that you can think of? Those are good ones. It's observations.
What's the word for it?
Oh, you're thinking.
Their attire.
Yep, how they're dressed. Absolutely. And then there's another observation a place of observation, and this requires a lot of skill. So if someone who, if you have ADHD, right? Oh, somebody's shaking their head, yes. I'm not going to name names. I have a little bit, so I know this. This is how I can tell you that that's like a really active brain, right? That's really active. If you can start to practice assigning a part of your brain, that active part of your brain, to be this outside observer, like the fly on the wall, then that fly on the wall is noticing, if I say this, how are you responding? And if you're saying that, how am I responding? And what's that interaction like? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same. My brain multitasks like every fast like that. So I'll be watching people, and so when I speak, I'll look at their face like, okay, maybe not the word I should use, maybe explain what I mean because they could take it the wrong way. But then at the same time, I observe how they like they're fidgeting or whatever it is to see if the difference.
So you have a little bit more practice in being able to observe because your brain is already wired to multitask, if you will. That requires a lot of practice, and that's another skill. So do you see where that's a skill too? Then, because now we know if we break down an effective communication, then what are the different components? And these are components that you can start to say, oh, how am I at observing? Like you might want to think, how are you at observing? How are you at listening? And then the next is paraphrasing and summarizing. I pack those two together. So what's the difference between paraphrasing and summarizing?
I think paraphrasing is just rewording what they said so that you're on the same page, but summarizing is
Just taking points out of it. Just bullet points. That's pretty
Right. So paraphrasing is maybe using your own words a little bit and to check for understanding from what people have said, and then summarizing would be kind of really pulling out the main points of what they said. So what I just did was summarizing, right? Okay. I've practiced that quite a bit. And I want you to know that those three skills can get you really far. You don't have to ask questions. And if you'll notice, asking questions is not on my list. Not on my list. So in a few minutes, after we've had a chance to look at the skills, I'm going to ask one of you to come up here, and we'll do a little bit of a demonstration of what this looks like all together. And then I'm going to assign the rest. I'll ask the rest of you if you'll notice how many questions I ask versus how often I use the other skills. Okay. The next one's immediacy. Immediacy is about here and now. And it would be using the listening and observation and verbalizing that. So immediacy would be, oh, I'm seeing that you're really paying attention to what I'm saying. I appreciate that. That's my immediacy. I appreciate that. And wow, you're taking notes too. That's pretty awesome. Thanks. So do you see how there are two pieces to that immediacy? One is what I'm observing, not just leaving it up here. I'm speaking what I'm observing. No judgment. This is the really important thing about immediacy is that you do your best to reserve judgment. You're just making an observation. You're not trying to interpret. You're just making an observation verbally. I see you're kind of swiveling in your chair right now. Yeah. So then I could say, hey, I wonder what's going on for you right now. So do you see how then I could turn that into a dialogue as opposed to just saying, hey, you're swiveling in your chair, which often feels like a judgment too. You might hear people in the classroom then follow something like, you're swiveling your chair, stop doing that, stop fidgeting, right? Because kids hear that a lot. And the last one, did you have a...
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you.
you've heard that. You've seen it happen.
I've seen it happen.
It's unfortunate
Mhm.
because kids then turn that external judgment into an internal judgment too.
Especially when some kids are like tactical like learners, like that's how they, they need something, to do while they learn. So.
Right, and then we add to that, there's less and less playground time where kids need to discharge all that energy that's building up as they're sitting in their chairs. We really weren't designed, this is what research is saying now, we really weren't designed to sit all day. And yet, that's how we ask people to learn. We don't just ask, we're kind of demanding people to learn that way. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. The last one is a reflection of affect. So I want to be really clear that a reflection of affect is not a question. Right? So a question would be, how does that make you feel? You've probably heard that in your program of study. And here's the reason that it's a reflection instead of a question. Because people feel in their bodies. And all of us have a pretty limited emotion vocabulary. Kids especially. And when we ask them, how do you feel? A lot of them can't figure it out. Adults can't figure that out. I work with adults and they can't figure that out. And so part of what we can do to help is to identify it, which might be, you look confused right there. That's a reflection of affect or feeling. Or when you say that, you look a little excited. And when you're able to accurately reflect, that deepens the connection between you and the other person. It makes a huge difference when you're able to accurately. And the great news is that we get a lot of tries for guessing. So you get to guess. Like, guessing really matters when it comes to reflecting affect. And if you guess wrong, you'll get to guess again because people will kind of give you credit for trying. Now, if you keep guessing wrong, that can be a disconnect. So, for example, I might be saying to you, you're looking really angry right now. And if you, right. and so you just showed me a face that the one side of me would say, she's not angry. I'm like, oh, not angry. But if I kept insisting that my observation was right, do you see how that could be a real disconnect? You weren't angry, you were just listening. So there's a big difference, isn't there? And so as we're able to empathize, not necessarily sympathize, but empathize by using listening, observation, paraphrasing, summarizing, immediacy, and reflection of affect, that really, really establishes a strong connection. So honestly, you don't have to do much more. Now, asking questions can be helpful, but if you ask too many questions, that's a disconnect too. And unfortunately, my observation has been that adults ask kids way too many questions. And it becomes finger pointing in some instances, or it becomes putting kids on the spot in some instances. And there goes the relationship, right? So what my challenge is to you over the course of the time that you're in this program, and maybe even for the rest of your lives, these are great skills to practice. So what you might do is to pick one or two that you're really going to focus on and get really good at it. Honestly, that's what happened for me. I figured out that it was better to guess at how someone felt, and so I practiced that a lot. I have interns that come to my practice and observe And when they observe, they'll say, you know, I didn't hear that many questions. You asked questions, but I didn't hear that many questions from you. And when you noticed how that client was feeling as they were talking, wow, they opened up even more. So that happens more often than not. Questions or comments? Yes.
I've noticed that I do guess a lot, but after the first guess they just continue to talk, and I'm just like, okay.
Isn't it amazing? It's like magic. Like, I call these power tools, they could be like the magic tools, right? So you've already started noticing that with your great observation skills.
A lot. It happens almost everybody I talk to. But like, sometimes it sounds like they're confused. So I was like, oh, so it sounds like you're confused.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, no, I'm not confused. And then they continue their stories. And I'm like, oh, okay. This is what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of a way to clarify.
Right. And you communicate, there's all these subtle communications that are happening when you guess or when you paraphrase or summarize or whatever else. And you're the part that you're playing in the relationship as well. So the handout has more information about these skills and tools. There's information about micro skills and evidence-based practice and attending behavior, which is essentially what we've talked about, listening, that helps to build empathy and rapport. You've got the observation skills. We've also got encouragers, paraphrasing and summarizing, and then reflection of affect. So you've got some explanation for all of those. Now, what I've also done is to have people, actually, this is a good exercise. So most of you have already a pen and paper. I'm going to give you like 30 seconds. It's not a long time, but it's still some amount of time to write down as many emotions, names for emotions as you possibly can think of. So you've got paper here. I mean, it's open. That's the whole purpose of it. It's at the bottom of the first page. Make a list of emotions you feel frequently. So you don't have to think about it too much. You might have to think about it, but just make a list. Okay, so stop. How many were you able to get down in 30 seconds? 30 seconds isn't a long time, and it is a long time too at the same time, right? How many were you able to get down? 5, 4, 10? Exceptional. 5? How
I
many?
had 3. It would have
3?
been more.
Would have
I
been
raised
more?
one.
So do you see the range? We've got 2 to all the way to 10. Average for something like this, that in my experience when I've done this exercise, is about 5. This is then, if you're not good at being able to identify emotions, then this would be something for you to really practice. First within yourself, and then also with other people. What we know too is that it's harder for children who aren't trained in identifying their emotions to not be able to identify their emotions. Surprise! I love how what research does is to tell us what we know. And so that's something that we know. And as adults who are in their lives to help provide healthier and different kinds of role models, then part of what you can do is to model identifying emotions too. So really, the first practice is start with yourself. Start noticing your own. I know I grew up in a family where you weren't supposed to get angry. Anybody have a family like that? Or you weren't supposed to be sad. All you could do is really express feeling happy. So what happens with all the other emotions? there are major emotion categories, and that's, I think, on page 3, no, the last page of the handout. We've got 6 basic feelings of sad, mad, glad, scared, and anxious, surprise, disgust, and contempt. And then 4 social emotions, guilt, shame, pride, and embarrassment. So that looks like 10 right there. Each one of those then has subcategories. And it helps to be able to take a look at nuance, right? So there is a difference between feeling scared and feeling anxious. And yet they're still on the same continuum. Like the body still responds the same way. What's really interesting too is that that excitement fires up the same kind of stuff in our bodies as fear. Isn't that interesting? And what we know now about emotions too is that if we're allowed to truly express and honor the emotions that we have, they pass through us. They're temporary. All emotions are temporary, except when we don't allow them to be. And not allowing an emotion of any sort locks it in the body. So if you're not allowed, like in the case of my family, if you're not allowed to be mad, guess what happens? Whenever something is understandably you're mad about, it gets locked in. And it pops up at a time when you're not wanting it to pop up. So does that make sense? Questions or comments?
I think this is very true though, because a lot of people hold stuff in, and then when it's not the time, you could be at the place, and it just comes out unexpectedly.
Because they can't control it, right? So often people don't express emotion because it's not safe. It's not safe. There are lots of reasons that it's not safe. And then the problem is that it does build up, and it gets expressed in a place where it's safer, like at school, right? Yeah. You had a question.
Yeah, well, it was one. Yeah.
Comment.
I learned. I don't know if it's true, but I learned that any like emotion you express lasts like 12 minutes, and anything beyond that is like self-inflicted. Is that true?
Oh, I hadn't heard it that way before. I have heard that anger and fear takes often 12 to 24 hours to dissipate in the body. And that has everything to do with the biochemical reaction that starts with the stress hormones in the body. So it takes that long for the biochemical response to really dissolve, if you will. So that's where exercising can be helpful for something like that, or making sure that you're eating right and that sort of thing. Thanks for that. Other questions or comments? So do you want to see what all this looks like? Who would be willing to take on the role of one of the kids that you've already started working with? You've already started working with kids, right? So this is the kind of help that you could get with, I don't know what to do with this kid, right? So if you could play the role of that child, whatever that child might be, that you're like, I don't know what to do here. So who would be willing to be my partner up here and do a little bit of a demonstration? I know you're still having lunch, so I'll excuse you from that. Yeah. So just one of you. I know this is the hardest part. I'm like, I don't really know if I want to do that. But you'll get a lot out of this, I promise.
If I can find a napkin, I'll do it.
Can somebody find a napkin for her? Because that'll save all of us.
I think it's from the
Yeah.
kitchen.
It has paper ball.
Okay, it's fine. It's just one.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. All right, now that you have a little bit in your belly, is that?
Yeah.
Okay. And you came in a little bit late. I have my therapy dog here. I don't know if you knew that or not. So let's see here. Come on, come on. Come on. That's it. So we'll put you off screen. Can you still see me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, hi, I'm Susan.
Hi.
Hi. So, I've seen you're sitting down. Looks like you might want to talk about something.
No, not really.
No?
No.
Okay. All right. So, what you been practicing lately?
Nothing. I don't like PE class. I don't like the other kids.
Hmm.
I don't want to be here. I just want to go home.
So, there's a lot on your mind right now.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in PE class, and you want to go home instead. Yeah. A lot of people want to go home in PE.
Yeah, school is boring. I don't like it. I don't like the people.
You're having a hard time if you don't like the people and it's boring, because that's like everything at school. And I'm guessing you've been feeling that way a long time.
Some days and some days no.
Oh, not every day.
No, not every day.
Huh. So what's the difference?
I don't know. It depends on if my classmates are getting on my nerves or not.
So, classmates get on your nerves.
They talk
That's-
too much.
Uh-huh.
They don't listen to the teacher.
Uh-huh.
Or they'll get next to me when I don't want them to.
That's they annoy you.
Yep.
That would be annoying. That would annoy me too. And so kind of, I'm guessing too that you don't really know what to do when they're annoying to you.
Well, sometimes I want to yell at them, but I was told that's not nice, so I leave the classroom.
Oh, okay. And then what happens?
I just stay with the counselor all day.
Well, that's certainly one way to not have to deal with them. So what ends up happening if you're with a counselor all day?
Nothing. We just talk about stuff and talk about anything that's not school.
Kind of like what we're doing right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then it makes me wonder how school, what keeps you coming back to school?
I have to.
You have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are things that we have to do. Well, and you also said that there are days that it's okay and other days that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the days that it's okay.
It's summertime or it's hot outside, not too cold.
Mm-hmm.
I get to go to recess. If everyone wants to play with me, then I'll play.
Yeah.
Or if they're not getting on my nerves.
Okay.
Those are the good days.
So part of the good days is if you could spend some time outside.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, you really like the outside then. Kind of, and I imagine that it's hard then to be in four walls. Yeah. And I'm guessing too that you kind of like the freedom of outside.
I get to walk around.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when you walk around?
I'm not in a classroom all day, so I get to kind of do what I want.
Okay. Yeah, in the classroom, there's a lot that you have to do that you don't really want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to kind of make the connection between why you're learning something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's part of what's going on for you too. Yeah. You're shaking your head, so I see that landed. Yeah. So you're not in PE right now. You're talking to me. And I'm kind of thinking that the main strategy that you use is to avoid something that you don't want to do. Would you want to learn some other strategies?
It depends.
Yeah.
Hmm.
On?
If I like it or not.
Well, how do you know you like something or not?
I don't know. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, then I don't like it.
I hear that a lot. And I'm always kind of curious about how that applies differently to different people. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. And so one thing that I know, what I know is that when you're learning or doing something new, it's uncomfortable. And that could feel like you don't like it. So what are you uncomfortable about?
I don't know.
About gym especially.
I don't know. It's too much going on sometimes. We just have to run around and everyone's always bumping into me and too loud. And
Mm-hmm.
it's too much going on.
There's some things in gym that you can't change. And maybe there's some things that you could change. So you can't change the noise level. And you can't change that there are other kids running around. And yet you like walking. So if we were to try and figure out how to deal with this, what do you think about that?
I mean, I can try it.
Well, it could be like an experiment. How do you like experiments?
I like them sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. What are the ones that you've liked?
Talking to my counselor, and sometimes playing with my classmates at recess, if it's just a little bit of us.
Okay, so fewer people makes a difference for you, yeah. So that would be something to kind of put on the let's try more of that. And what else have you tried?
Just sitting by myself.
And what's that experiment like?
I don't know.
Sometimes it's good and sometimes not so good. Yeah. And I think that you'll probably find that true for a lot of things. Sometimes it's good and sometimes not so good. Yeah. Life is kind of a big experiment in a way, figuring out. And then the good news is that discomfort, not feeling comfortable, that passes. And sometimes it's hard to tolerate it, but it sometimes passes too. Yeah. So what do you want to do next?
I don't know.
So what are our choices right now?
I don't know. Can you tell me?
I don't know either.
Well, maybe I can try something new.
Oh, okay.
But
So
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what that is. You could try something new. So I always think that we have at least 3 choices. One is to do the same thing that we've always done. Another is to try something a little bit different, not really a lot different. And the third is to try something completely new. So what are you up for?
Maybe something a little different.
Something just a little bit different. Okay, so you already told me that you like being around just a few people, and you like walking, and you like being outside, and you're needing to be in gym class. So what's happening in gym class today?
I might participate. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll try.
So then you have a choice in gym class of what you could do. So this is the experiment. Like you're walking into gym class and you're thinking, I have 3 choices today. How does that sit with you? And if you don't do anything different, you're done a little bit different. Just thinking, what? I have 3 choices today. What am I going to choose today? What do you say about that? I'm going to try it. And then, how am I going to know what's happened?
I can tell you.
Ooh, I'd like that. All right. So when's gym class?
Next time we have gym classes, Monday.
Monday?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to put in my head to look for you on Monday. If I don't see you on Monday, then the next time, are you in every day? I don't think you're in. Are you guys in every day? So the next time I'm in, I'll look for you and you can look for me.
Okay.
How does that sound?
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we'll do a clapper. So, do you know what that is? Do you know it's like the take two?
Yeah,
They're called clappers. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
Yeah, they're called movie clappers.
Oh.
All right, so we'll hear from you first.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the students in my class, she's so sweet, but she, I couldn't understand at first, but she just doesn't really like to be around her classmates as much. Some days, like, she's fine. Like, the other day, she was playing with them at recess, like, and she was, like, the one in charge and everything. But other days, she's just like, no, I don't want to do that. Or there's certain days where she's not even in the classroom. Like, she'll come to class for, like, 5 minutes, and then just decide that she doesn't want to be there and will be with the counselor for the rest of the day. And the teachers even mentioned it, you don't understand the work right now because you have to play catch up. You're not in here as much. And I was observing her in PE class. I think it was Monday. She was just sitting on the wall, just walking back and forth. And I'm like, you don't want to play? No, they're getting on my nerves. They don't listen. They yell too much or they keep bumping into me. And I'm like, well, you don't want to try? No, I'm going to just sit over here. And then she would go sit with the counselor and stuff that she has. And she's with her majority of the time. Like today was the first time I've really seen her in the classroom, like for the whole time.
That tells me a whole lot. Like from the bird's eye view, that tells me a whole lot about.
But she's so sweet and she, she's smart. I think all of the kids are smart. But, yeah, I just don't know.
I was gonna say, cause I had someone similar like that. Well, I didn't have him. He had his own. Like he was in the school, and I just observed him. He had the same kind of thing, but they thought he was on the spectrum. So they said he is actually on the spectrum, and his type of autism that he has, he's like, he doesn't like to do the same thing every day.
Yeah.
And it's like that type of thing. Like, you know how it's like usually they
the
like
opposite.
to do the same
It's the opposite,
thing.
right?
I guess the same thing for him is something different every day.
Yeah.
So going to gym, he hated it because they do the same warm-ups.
Right.
They play the same games. Or they don't always play the same games, but when he saw that they were doing the new game, that's when he would want to join in, but he would want to skip the whole warm-up.
Yeah.
So I was like, maybe, I don't know.
Well, I know I've seen one time after they had recess, she had to go to the office to get, I guess, some medication. She takes like a small blue pill. I don't know what that's for exactly. I didn't ask because I don't want to like overstep my boundaries just yet since like the second weekish for me. I can? Oh, okay.
And it's
Okay.
probably, a genetic form of Ritalin, right?
So it's possible that she has some ADHD. I would say that there's some anxiety in there. That's what I identified uncomfortable. Did you hear that? You heard that, right? I some kids are uncomfortable around different kinds of situations. So that's the low grade, as opposed to you feel really anxious. Like that's a bigger, right?
And I noticed that compared to everyone else in her class, like a lot of the times, well, I have second grade, so second graders are. They don't, they don't listen as much. Their attention span is much shorter. But she'll tell them, you know, you guys stop talking or stop. You're going to get in trouble. Like, so she knows how to follow the rules.
Right.
Like,
So
and
there's
she
a little
would
bit of
rather,
sensory overload
yeah, she
what's
would
going on
rather
with her.
follow the rules than to get in trouble, especially in the classroom. Because I noticed that when they went to the library today, and they're all in the circle, and her classmates just kept talking and talking. She's like, you know, back up some, give everybody some space, or stop talking, like, listen. So it's, you know, I'm really trying to, you know, like,
something about getting in trouble, or
I don't know.
Well, so I'm convinced that we could try and diagnose what's all the things that are wrong, and work from the what's wrong.
Yeah.
The solution, there's a great solution focused approach that says, what is she doing right? Like, she's an incredible leader right there.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So that's one skill that she has. Does she know she has it? Probably not. Like, she likes to be in charge. Okay, so let's figure out ways that she can be in charge.
Right.
And that's also making sure kids know that they have choices. So did you hear me say? Everyone has 3 choices. At any given moment, we have 3 choices. Anytime. Even though we feel like we might not have a choice, we always have a choice. But people don't always know that because they feel stuck, they feel scared. And when we feel scared, we don't even know what we're thinking. So you can weave in any of those pieces there. So I want to, I need to do a little bit of a time check.
2:23.
2:23. All right, so I have a couple of minutes. So what did you notice? So what did you notice, and then what did you notice? What did you notice in terms of the interaction that we had?
It's more so not necessarily trying to be so overbearing, but trying to get her to, I guess, see the qualities in her, like what she can do to change her situation and not what you want her to do.